Everyone's an artist. Everyone's an artist in the city, in any city. It's easy to get lost in that sea of artists. Deadline projects.
Deadline projects.
Deadline projects.
We started as a group of artists to make art for ourselves, and then we decided to make the art that we made into art shows. So now we're an art collective that actually puts on our own art shows.
Basically what we all have in common is that we want to make art, and we kind of need a push sometimes and a focus, and so we give ourselves a theme and roll with it.
And I think we're all like artists that just kind of like found ourselves after school and not knowing what to do and needing like a guidance and a deadline to just create artwork.
It's really hard to motivate to actually make art when you have a 9-to-5 job.
I'm an office manager for a small company.
I make video games.
Graphic designer.
Bank Secrecy Act Anti-Money Laundering Officer at a bank.
Concept artist, industrial designer, and model maker.
Director of trial services at a company called Animation Technologies.
Since I've been in this group, it's been the most productive that I've been since I graduated. So that just feels great to me, like to be back in that place where I'm making work consistently.
It is a way for me to keep engaged in creating art for my sake or art for art's sake that isn't for the purpose of paying my bills, supporting my family.
We started this group without even a name, and the name just became evident throughout the process. That we wanted deadlines, we wanted to get things done, we wanted to keep our ideas flowing.
Since we focus on a central idea, a central theme, that's the cornerstone of each show. So once we've decided on that,
We have these meetings where we share ideas, but we're also like sharing ideas like on a daily basis. If somebody has an idea, they'll just like email somebody and we'll start like a whole long chain of emails. So we always have ideas brewing, and then we just make sure to get together and have meetings and talk about it.
Being in a larger group of people, you can delegate tasks more easily, and so we all sort of share the work. It's not all-consuming. It doesn't take up your entire life to put these shows on.
Having these hard dates that we are going to have shows on, that people are going to see our work, really gives me the necessary incentive that I need in order to produce.
I mean, when I make stuff for myself, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that passion to make it because it's just going to sit in a closet. But if I make it so other people will see it, and we have a cool party around it, then it makes it better.
First of all, they're one-night events, so everybody kind of puts in their all to really make it happen for one night. So there's a great party atmosphere, which draws a variety of people who aren't necessarily there for the art, but the art opens up their eyes to this whole thing that's going on.
party has this connotation that, it's not just a party, it really is an art show. But we try to keep it lighthearted, try to keep everything open and social versus like a stuffy gallery. I know a lot of people are turned off by that. They walk in and they kind of feel out of place, like they feel they need to be quiet. It's not like that here. We have music and we try to get everyone to meet new people and socialize and that kind of thing.
We're just laid back enough, and yet people are interested enough to really talk about the art on the wall, most of the night, without it being stuffy. So I think the dialogue is the most important thing, and I think you're going to have a good conversation about art.
And everyone's that has different connections within the artist community, and this is a big networking hub for us. These are our emerging artists who are progressively getting more recognition. We all have our own little niche and our own connections in the artist community, and we're building more of a resume and a name for ourselves.
And if you don't have the young artists, you don't have the mid-career artists, you never end up with the great masters. So having a community that fosters young emerging artists is really important to the entire art world.
In my mind, I've played in bands, so I sort of think of it as the art world equivalent of a band.
We do this because we like it, and it's not a business. It's just because we like doing it, and that's it.
The shows are theme oriented. So we get together, we discuss an idea like for potential theme for like an art project or for an art theme show, and then we all create our individual pieces of work based around that theme, so that they're all tied in to each other. Okay, my piece fits in with the theme because it ties in with three elements that are bigger than your life: religion, civilization, and war. And I show each of those elements with three figures, three elements in here. This represents like war, this is civilization, and this is the religious aspect of the piece. Now I'm breaking up and using more of the negative space and using more shape relationships. This line here, these angle text. This is a screen print. I begin by salvaging and going through old catalogs and books and taking out imagery that I find interesting. Through the process of like using Photoshops and creating layers, I build the piece digitally. Eventually, I'll take it to the next level of screen printing that I finish in my studio. I'll start 25, and like in the process of me just doing new colors, I'll lose 3 prints. Maybe 1 per color was a print. I'll misregister something like blobby ink. So basically, out of 25, I'll probably have 20 of them. If I'm lucky, sometimes I have less, sometimes I don't mess up at all.
I got my degree at the University of Miami. I have a BFA in sculpture. So I tend to make 3-dimensional work, but it's very concept-based. So sometimes my main thing is to make whatever idea I have in my head come true, whether or not I know how to make it. Sometimes it's a collaborative process. Sometimes I have to seek out outside help. But the primary thing for me is concept.
It's called A Whole Lot of Nothing, and it's 15 yards of nylon. I got the material from an actual flag factory. It's a piece where I took the idea of a flag symbolizing a belief in something, and how they tend to become about nothing. They get so trivialized. All I really did was a little bit of hemming and sewing. The biggest creative decision I had to make was what to do with all the excess fabric. And at first I had sort of put it very neatly folded, and then I realized that I felt like it would put the point through more if it was just sort of a big bundled mess. Flags generally don't touch the ground, and in this case I'm sort of subverting it by having it not only touch the ground but be like an excess, like just a lot of it. And it really doesn't mean that much. It doesn't mean anything at all.
Mark Salha. I'm from Montreal. Originally, I'm Lebanese. I moved to Montreal when I was 12 or something, and moved to Chicago 3 years ago. Well, actually, I was working on another piece, and I didn't get a chance to finish it. So this is the piece. It's oil on canvas. When I started working on it, I was thinking about landscapes, and yes, I know that there's no landscape behind it, but I found it very hard to paint a landscape in this today's day and age. When I thought about landscape, I started thinking about 3D space. And that's what X, Y, and Z means. When you work on a 3D program, you use the the X, Y, and Z dimension and stuff. From there, I thought about, okay, well, to dissect just the arm, take the arm and just put it in a 3D space was a very flat, very simple background. It's my arm, actually, so it's the artist's arm. What I was thinking about is virtual reality versus like landscape and stuff, that we're humanity in general, we're moving around and we're constantly traveling and constantly moving, that landscape in itself has no meaning anymore. So virtual space has more meaning right now because it's much more malleable and much more ephemeral.
I'm Kira Termini. It's good for me to have a deadline. It's true.
I felt that for this show, for Bigger Than My Life, that dirt was sort of a very essential aspect of life and the growing of things. I wanted to share a sort of self-sufficient style of living with people. Most of my dirt is ready to be harvested. There's a lot of good dirt in here. So these windows are exposing a lot of the dirt to light. So the worms are going to scurry away to the other end and I can harvest the good dirt from my plants. This is a vermicompost bin that my friends Sean Bay and Renee Una helped me build.
It's nice because I'm exposed to the art world in Chicago, and I guess you could say they're exposed to me, but I enjoy it because the people are really great. And it's just fun.
If the FCC shuts down our party, I'll take full responsibility.
The title of the piece is Immortality Transmitter. There's a couple of components here. The one you can see is it's a television that I've modified so that it displays the waveform of audio that runs through it. There's an array of antennas here, and the audio that's being input is being broadcast on an FM like radio frequency.
I feel like it's missing a little something. I also didn't even consider that now I have this like flat surface here, which I almost want to put maybe like a big red arrow pointing up.
With the array of antennas, it's actually pushing the signal straight up. So whatever you speak into this microphone travels through the antenna in electronic form and basically into space. There's also this idea that you speaking into the microphone generate this signal that will outlive you. You know, it transmits a portion of you, your personality, whatever it is you decide to say. And so the idea here is that whatever you say into this microphone is going to exist in the universe for the life of the universe.
think strength in numbers can be very true, and I advocate for the type of group that we're running. I think that the lonely artist stereotype is not always a good thing to fall into.
These are options 1 and 2, and these are 2 pieces. They're digital prints. They're photos, but they incorporate some mixed media, some drawing and sculpture, and diorama work that I did, and lighting, to sort of create these environments that are meant to address the theme of bigger than your life for Deadline projects. So I really like to not get too specific about some of the themes and ideas that I'm evoking here, because one of the ideas is there's a sort of mystical aspect to this, and I'm definitely working with themes of religion for sure, but in incorporating other photos that I've taken before in my past journeys, it's kind of like a collage of my own experiences to address religion and the soul and the mystical journey of life. So you see in this one is Frank Lloyd Wright architecture in Sedona, Arizona, and then in here this is a more like a figurative piece, and we're mirroring themes of magnification and questioning.
I didn't think that we were going to be so adamant about showing art, but I'm really glad that we are. I think that's another cool thing about us too. We're all completely different, and we as a group can be out there showing our stuff and be completely different.
Well, it is Britney Spears, if that's not obvious, being hounded by the paparazzi, and she's being protected by an unknown hand here.
I'm using the group as a way to create a larger body of more recent work. In the past, I've created work like crazy, nonstop, and I've kind of slowed down, and I'm using the deadline like I was in college to create more work.
In my opinion, Britney Spears, by herself, and not necessarily even just the paparazzi, they're all very bigger than my life, at least, bigger than probably most people's lives here. And they've sure taken up a lot of my time as I read about it and watch TV about it. I mean, it's everywhere, so you can't really escape it.
I am Steven Shapiro. I do traditional photography, but I use digital in a way that traditional photography couldn't quite grasp. Digitally assisted photography.
All right, so what's going on here is we've got a grandfather with this vibrant palette of paint and a paintbrush, painted clothes, and his grandson kind of clean clothed. And he's trying to show his grandson what it is to paint, and teach him to paint. And he's got this, show him that he's got this huge blank canvas in front of him that he can paint as much as he wants to, but he doesn't quite realize that children really are the new ones with such a blank canvas. We have already painted ours, and we have a lot left to paint. Paint life lived, endless possibility, knowledge to give. Listen, child, live. I guess what I'd like people to get away from this piece is people to look at their own canvas, their own life, see what they have painted, what they can paint. Maybe even show others what they can paint.
Well, the theme is bigger than your life. Each artist has chosen a topic that they feel is bigger than their life, that is something huge and all-encompassing, and isn't just one individual. It's it's just so massive. Well, it's titled Worthless or the State of the Economy. I think debt and deficit is a huge problem right now for individual people, but also it's just such a nationwide issue. So these are dollar bills and cement. These are dollar bills that have been rendered worthless. And to me, like debt and money, it's just this massive thing, and it's the epitome of something that is all-encompassing. It rules our lives. So to me, the choice was really easy. I used a pencil case, and I put cement in the bottom, and I laid the dollar bill in there, and I covered the dollar bill in cement, and slowly he's getting swallowed up by the cement. So he's drowning.
There's a lot of irony involved here. Clearly, I meant it to be ironic that, you know, I'm wasting money on a project that's dealing with debt. Now that they look like headstones, it's becoming more like a tribute to the death of the American dollar.
I've always been hesitant to mix politics with art, just because that kind of detracts from people's ability to interpret things for themselves. It's all just marker drawing. I use brush tips and Sharpies, and I use watercolor paper, so it has kind of a watercolor feeling. Use the brush tips I use are very wet. I just have to work in a medium that dries instantly, so I can stick it under my bed or in a closet, because I don't have a lot of space to work, and I've got a family. You know, I don't want things stuck in an oil painting that I didn't intend to be there. And that's part of the reason for my medium. Also, it's cheap, and it's something I need to consider when I'm making art. I think the purpose of it was because I wanted to start engaging people in just conversation about the things I don't think are being talked about enough. I think pretty much people have accepted that the war in Iraq happened because of oil. I don't think anyone really believes anymore that it had anything to do with democracy. I think unless people start talking about it, it's just going to keep happening. And I don't pretend to have any solutions, but I think that the only way to get to a solution is to start talking about it. And the more people that talk about it, the more information that's spread, the more likely it is that, you know, something will happen. I'm starting to appreciate the fact that it does feel larger than my life, and that's why I'm really glad that the first show I was able to get involved with Deadline Projects was themed that, because I thought my newest piece really fit into it.
I think for a lot of my life, I was exposed to things that I thought were larger than my life or bigger than my life. But the most immediate, the most cataclysmic, I guess, example of that feeling was as soon as I became a dad. They are called Legacy Part 1 and Legacy Part 2. They are relief prints made of my son out of 3 separate copper plates. I took a photograph of my son, his name is Quinn, and turned it into a color halftone, split it into 3 separate color separations, a red, a blue, and a yellow. Based on those, I drilled out 3 copper plates by hand with different size holes. Then I inked the remaining surface of the copper plates and printed them. In this piece, I printed them one on top of the other. In this piece, I printed them layered. So what you're seeing here is a
like a color separation, a breakdown of what's contained in this.
I'm more driven by process than by tradition or than by practice, I guess. I really enjoy the process that comes about in trying to create something. So whatever lends itself to the concept I'm working under. Sometimes I'm a sculptor, sometimes I'm a jeweler, sometimes I'm a designer, and sometimes I'm a painter.
I think Chicago is really unique in the sense that groups like us can exist, and there's lots of them, and the art scene is pretty open. Really, everybody's kind of working together. And working in the gallery system, I see that as well, that, you know, galleries are pretty open, they're pretty down to earth, people are friendly. There's a lot of opportunity for young artists, for mid-career artists. There's a lot happening here.
It's called Chicago Recycles, and it's kind of about the lack of recycling system in Chicago. Blue is actually the color of the Chicago recycling program, but it really doesn't exist. You can't actually recycle styrofoam peanuts, you can't recycle a number of other common household items, so there really is no structure for that, so that's what it's about. It's made of stretcher bars that are used in painting with canvas generally, and styrofoam peanuts that are painted blue with spray paint.
Deadline Projects is a group of people who have kind of come together through overlapping social circles, centered around the idea of wanting a deadline. Pretty much everybody has a day job. They're all artists. They went to art school or just have worked on art projects all throughout their life. And it's a way of making sure that you make time for that. We've got a great venue now, but I think that in the future, you know, we could end up breaking into the mainstream gallery system because every one of the artists participating is really talented, and together we're only stronger.